Our keynote speaker, Alexandra Flores-Quilty. Ms. Flores-Quilty spent the first part of her career dedicated to education justice. She served as executive chair of the Oregon Student Association, where she was part of winning in-state tuition for undocumented Oregonians and developing OSA's electoral program that broke records across the country in voter registration and turnout. Later, she served as the elected president of the UC Student Association, or the U.S. Student Association, apologies, where she worked with Senator Bernie Sanders' office to introduce federal legislation for free higher education and organized the 2015 Million Student March. Ms. Flores-Quilty later worked on to co-found an organization called #AllOfUs, which built political power behind progressive candidates and by the people, a pro-democracy grassroots campaign that organized to impeach Donald Trump during his first administration while also serving as its executive director. If that wasn't impressive enough, she currently serves as the campaign director of Free Speech for the People, a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to defending and strengthening our democracy. Since assuming this role in 2021, she has helped lead the organization's coalition building, organizing, and advocacy. This has included efforts to confront big money in politics, from the advancement of legislation banning multinational corporate political spending, to working with Congresswoman Summer Lee on legislation to abolish super PACs. Without further ado, please allow a big round of applause for our keynote speaker for this morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you all doing? I heard there was a late night board meeting last night, so I hope you guys got some caffeine, and yeah, really excited to be here with you all. My name is Alexandra Flores-Quilty. I'm the campaign director of Free Speech for People. I use she, her, and Aya for my pronouns. Yeah, I'm a former student leader, the current campaign director of Free Speech for People. Oh, okay, great. And yeah, today I want to share with you all about my student organizing journey, some of the lessons that I learned. I also want to share with you about some of the existential crises that we're facing as a democracy in this moment, and what lessons we can take from history and from international examples when folks were faced with authoritarian threats and backsliding democracies. I hope that these insights will be useful for you all as you set your agenda and platform for the upcoming year. Before we get into all of that though, I just wanted to invite some energy into this space. These are hard and difficult times. We have to be ready to be energized and be able to fight back. So I was hoping that you would indulge me and participate in a chant. Maybe you're familiar with this one. So it's a call and response. When I say, when blank rights are under attack, what do? You'll say, get up, fight back. Okay, I think some of you are familiar with this one. Okay, so I'm gonna do 3 of them. When student rights are under attack, what do? Get up, fight back. When immigrant rights are under attack, what do? Get up, fight back. When human rights are under attack, what do? Get up, fight back. Woo, thank you. I feel the fire and power in this room. It's really been great to be with you all this weekend. I've had a chance to connect with some of you. I've really resonated with a lot of folks' experiences and some of the stories I've heard about some of the challenges many of us in our communities have faced in accessing higher education. For me, education has always meant a lot to the women in my family. This is my family and 4 generations of women here. The little one is me from many years ago. I won't tell you what year, but many years ago. And despite these challenges, the women in my family have built really impressive lives and have fought even harder for their daughters and their children. And so it came time for me to be able to go to college. My mother approached my education with that same special determination that the women in my family have. And the day came and I was actually able to enroll at the University of Oregon. My mother dropped me off at college and she was so excited. It's just like the movies. I'm dropping you off at school to go to your dorm. And she had the most incredible look on her face when she left me at my dorm room. Maybe that's something that some of you can relate to. So here I was, a student at the University of Oregon. I was not planning to get involved at all in anything political, and I didn't honestly even know what organizing was. I thought that was just maybe someone who liked to keep their papers and stuff in order. What I didn't know though was that the University of Oregon had a very deep student organizing tradition that went back for generations, just like the UC's. And freshman year, it was pretty quick that I got recruited into a number of different causes, but specifically, like, one of the first big things that happened was that I was invited to this meeting. And in this meeting, it was a group of really incredible student leaders who were progressive and said that we were going to run a slate and take over the student government. All of this was brand new to me, and I remember hearing them talk about this legacy of student organizing, about these student organizers who came before us and accomplished these incredible things that I was now reaping the benefits of. They talked about student fee autonomy and the creation of the Oregon Student Association, our version of USSA. They talked about how students had protested and organized, did sit-ins to have the ethnic studies department, which for me was really powerful because I was taking ethnic studies courses. And that was actually the first time I had ever really heard about my ancestors and my community's history in a classroom. And so the idea that, like, I had gotten to learn that because the students who came before me, like, this was their gift to me from across generations. And so I just remember feeling goosebumps, thinking that, like, wow, I'm a part of something that I, like, didn't even know existed. And so I also felt the call to action. If those students accomplished those things during their time, what was I going to do with my time now that I was a student and had the ability to organize like them? So I joined the Progressive Slate and I was elected into office. We won by a landslide, FYI, but just bragging some years later. While I was in school, we worked on a number of different key issues, but at the foundation of all of our work was the VOTE program. We couldn't win anything at the statewide level unless we had electoral power behind students, behind young people. And so we did this as a part of the statewide program with the Oregon Student Association, again, our version of USSA. And honestly, our program was incredible. We had been building it up for years and years, getting better and having better systems in place so that we could register and turn out huge amounts of students to vote. So this included clipboarding, class wraps, door knocking at every single campus across the state. We registered and turned out so many students that we actually broke national records. In 2014, we registered 55,311 students to vote. And to give you all perspective, I don't know if you know this, but Oregon's a lot smaller than California. We're pretty tiny, actually. And so actually at the time, in 2014, we had registered 1 out of every 40 voters in the state of Oregon. 90% of the young people registered to vote in Oregon that year were registered by OSA. Very, very incredible. And I got to be a part of that. I was very honored. And it was because of this electoral program that we were able to have meaningful wins in the state legislature. It was during that time that we were up against huge corporate and wealthy interests who were trying to privatize our universities. They had a lot of money and a lot of weight behind them, and we were able to defeat their privatization attempts. In addition to that, we were able to finally win in-state tuition for undocumented students. And it was an honor to get to be a part of that victory, which also had taken over 10 years to win when students had first launched as a statewide campaign. Every year, moving the ball forward a little bit further, and so we were finally able to do this. So none of the work that we do is in a vacuum. It's in connection with students who came before us, whose names and faces we may never know. When I was in college, I also got involved with the United States Student Association, USSA. I'll take you all back to the summer of 2011, and please don't do the math for how old you might have been at that year. I was in Tallahassee, Florida, attending the USSA National Student Congress, and I remember having butterflies in my stomach during the opening remarks, hearing the incredible student leaders speak. I had the worst imposter syndrome as I was surrounded by some of the greatest student organizers in the country. Perhaps that's something that some of you might have felt before. But as the week went on while I was at this conference, I began taking advantage of all the lessons that everyone was so eager to offer me. Everyone, from other student leaders to the staff to the alumni, everyone was so eager to impart their wisdom. And they also shared that they started out not knowing anything as well. And then here they are later on having accomplished so much stuff and leading such incredible work. And so more and more, I was feeling more empowered and a little bit less like an imposter. And I soon joined the USSA Board of Directors. And then after college, I was elected to become the vice president and then president of USSA. In USSA, we fought against cuts to federal financial aid. We helped build, I want to do this, sorry, photos from student organizing. We helped build student and youth power nationally. We put forth a vision of what higher education should look like. And in 2015, I stood on the Capitol lawn with Senator Bernie Sanders up there on the right, and as he introduced federal legislation for universal free higher education. And then that helped inspire this really amazing viral moment called the Million Student March, where 110 campuses across the country held mass demonstrations, mobilizing students in the name of free higher education and a cancellation of all student debt. Students in the US have had to fight over and over again in order to have these institutions like the room that we're sitting right now, like UCSA. UCSA, OSA, USSA, these are not things that just happened that someone gave us. They're actually the product of students who came before us, who organized to have student fee autonomy, and who won and then created these incredible institutions. We heard yesterday about some of the history of, during the welcome session, about the student associations and student fee autonomy. I want to add just also another note in there about my alma mater, University of Oregon. It was in 1971 that another important precedent was set when the students at the University of Oregon actually sued the university administration for control of the student fee. Can you imagine, like, during your college career being like, I'm just gonna sue the university. And they won. They got student fee autonomy. It eventually made its way up to very high courts in the US, and it set a precedent that then empowered other student governments across the country to have control over their student fee, to do things beyond planning homecoming or concerts or Spirit Week, but actually be able to fund statewide student associations and the US Student Association. So this is something, again, won and fought for by generations past. And there's a quote from a woman named Becky Wasserman that I think of a lot. She's a USSA alumni, and she says exactly this: these institutions are gifts won and fought for by generations past. And I think that it's easy to take things like UCSA for granted, and I guess what I really just want to impart on you all is, again, it really takes decades and generations to build up something like UCSA. So I hope that you all won't take it for granted. I hope that you use it to do what it's meant to do, which is to organize to improve students' lives. So let's get into what makes good organizing. Elsie from USSA did an incredible training yesterday for you all on organizing. So I want to build on that and our understanding of power. I want to share some further points from a training institute called the Midwest Academy. This is like one of the #1 training institutes and frameworks for how to understand to do good organizing. And so we talked yesterday about how power is the ability to get what we want from someone who has the authority to give it to us when the person would not otherwise do so. So how do we get them to do what we want? Midwest Academy breaks this down into different types of power. There's consumer power. This is appropriate when it comes to companies and corporations. We have consumer power means cutting profits to a significant amount where we then have power over that company or corporation. There is disruptive power. That's stopping an institution from being able to function. This could look like strikes and sit-ins. And then there is electoral power. This means mobilizing voters, a critical mass of voters. This is one of the most applicable forms of power for student organizing. You all are a part of a public higher education system, keyword public. This system is overseen by the state legislature, which is elected by the people. So at the end of the day, our power lies in the electoral power and our program. So to build and wield that kind of power, we need to get students to vote in mass, and we need students to get active on our issues in mass. Earlier, you heard my example of this with the OSA vote program and the issues that we fought on for in the state legislature. If there's another takeaway I can impart on you all, is that good organizing is the act of mobilizing a critical mass of people to pressure a decision maker to make an institutional change. we need massive amounts of students to take action with us for our agenda. So as you all are setting your agenda for the state, for your campuses, your strategy needs to entail how you're building a student base and how you're mobilizing folks. So this can look like mobilizing people to take grassroots action, like call-in days, lobbying visits, and even protesting in the street. So I have a little friendly challenge for you all as you're thinking about the year ahead. My challenge to you all is that maybe before the end of the weekend or sometime in the near future, you all sit down and you really try and put a number, quantify what do you think is the current number of folks that you can mobilize around your agenda. What's the current base? Not what you're going to build quite yet, but what do you currently have? And now make a plan on how at the end of this year you will have increased the amount of people that you can mobilize. So again, my challenge is over the course of next year, increase the size of student base that you can mobilize. And then my second part of my challenge to you all is to fight for something that you will look back on one day and be proud of. And I think, fascism, great. I wanted to zoom out for a bit because I think it's important to acknowledge the context that we're in. These aren't normal times, if there ever was a such thing of normal times. As you may have remembered from the introduction before, the work I do now is defending and strengthening democracy. After my time at USSA, I found myself most concerned with the issue of our democracy, the state of our democracy. And so I dedicated myself to the study of civil resistance and the tradition of pro-democracy organizing. And in the last 10 years, the United States has faced an unprecedented democratic backslide. And I think that there is a palpable collective grief and fear that we share as democratic guardrails and civil liberties are rapidly eroded by the Trump administration. And so I want to offer this definition of fascism because there's actually a lot of study and harvested lessons from throughout history and throughout the world. Fascism is an authoritarian political tradition that seeks to consolidate power with a centralized leader by creating a movement that demonizes vulnerable communities, suppresses dissent, glorifies/utilizes violence, and mobilizes society through propaganda and exclusionary policies. The current fascist movement in the US is fueled by ideologies of white supremacy, misogyny, and Christian nationalism. Corporate and mega wealthy elite are fanning these flames as a means for their own self-interests, all while undermining the safety of our communities and damaging our democratic institutions. There are telltale signs of fascism as outlined by experts like Jason Stanley. So if you want to read more about that, check out Jason Stanley. But I want to highlight 3 for you. 1, a mythic past. This is really important to understand the narrative kind of war that we're in. They often use this idea of a mythic past. There is a glorified, imagined past where the nation was pure and strong, but often is ignoring and outright lying about historical complexities or injustices. And there is this yearning to, quote, go back. So we can think about that with what we see around the narrative of Make America Great Again. Number 2, another sign is anti-intellectualism, to undermine critical thinking, academia, and students in order to weaken opposition to fascist ideas. Universities are branded as incubators of communism and the radical left. We have seen this with the withholding of federal funding to academia and research by the Trump administration and the other ways that they have attacked our universities and college campuses. And third, there's another sign of this is the weaponizing of, quote, law and order, to justify authoritarian crackdowns of demonized communities and political opponents. We have seen this with the use of ICE towards both immigrants and anti-ICE protesters protecting their neighbors. We have seen this with the Department of Justice, who have targeted political opponents. Another sign is this idea of unreality, where they have created a world where the truth is irrelevant, and only the leader's narrative matters, often through conspiracy theories and discrediting the press. Facts are debased, and without a common understanding of reality, reason to debate becomes impossible. For example, with Trump's big lie about the 2020 election being stolen and non-citizens voting. So we can look at history and internationally for what the authoritarian playbook looks like. But we can also look at these examples for what works and doesn't work when it comes to resistance. So now listen up, because this applies to you all as students, because you all have a very important role to play in this moment. So there are 3 lessons I want to share with you all from experts like Timothy Snyder, if you want to read more with him, about how we can resist in this moment. Number 1, okay. Oh, no, yeah, okay. Do not obey in advance. What do I mean by this? Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given by the people. Let me say that again. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given by the people. Individuals often think ahead about what those in power want and don't want, and they begin to act as such. This is a form of anticipatory obedience. Authoritarians count on all of us obeying in advance, but we can refuse to do so, and we can refuse to do so en masse. Number 2, defend institutions. Institutions are important targets for tyrannical regimes, especially those that comprise themselves of members, like labor unions, like student associations, like USSA. Institutions do not protect themselves. Institutions have to be protected by people. So defending our institutions is a powerful way to resist authoritarianism. And then number 3, standing out. There are going to be times in the face of tyranny that it appears that no one is going to fight back. But these are the moments for our invitations for leadership. Courage is contagious. Timothy Snyder says, the moment you set an example, the spell of the status quo is broken and others will follow. And we can see such powerful examples of that throughout history and throughout the world. And I want to share with you one specific example of students being at the forefront of confronting authoritarianism. In the 1990s, Serbia was ruled by a ruthless dictator, Slobodan Milosevic. He committed ethnic cleansing and mass humanitarian abuses. People were terrified to rebel against the government for fear of retaliation. However, it was college students across the country that summoned great courage to organize a mass resistance movement. They used humor, street theater, swag, and powerful imagery to inspire a national resistance. Milosevic was not brought down by a political opponent or the opposition party. Milosevic was not brought down by the courts or other institutions. He wasn't even brought down by the wealthy elite who might have opposed him. Instead, he was brought down by ordinary young students and young people from across the country who took responsibility for their country and set a powerful example for the rest of their nation. There's actually a great documentary about this that you can watch online for free called Taking Down a Dictator. And these are some of the images of their movement. Later in the Q&A, if you have questions about OPCOR, I could go on and on about it. It's like a really, really cool movement. So feel free to follow with me if you want to know more. But I think that one thing I want to highlight with all of this is that we do not choose our time. The student activists confronting racial segregation in the 1950s and 60s did not choose their time, but they responded with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And the students facing the Vietnam War did not choose their time, but they responded with a social movement that lowered the voting age to 18 and ended the war. We did not choose to have our time defined by Donald Trump and a backsliding American democracy. But it is now up to us for how we respond. And I want to say, after interacting with you guys for the last day and a half, I have every confidence in you all. I think that you all have every single thing that you need to lead in this moment in this room. I want to share a little bit more about the work that I do at Free Speech for People. We are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to strengthening and defending democracy and promoting political equality for all. We work on challenging big money in politics, confronting corruption and abuse of power in government, and fighting for the right to vote and free and fair elections. But we have a particular focus and expertise in constitutional law. I work with an incredible team of constitutional attorneys. And one of our main campaigns that we've been working on is to uphold the Constitution and confront the abuses of power of this administration. We have led for the fight for impeachment and removal of President Trump. Our team of constitutional lawyers at Free Speech for People has been tirelessly tracking every single violation of the Constitution and abuse of power he has committed since the day that he took office. And we've been making that available as a public resource at our website, impeachtrumpagain.org. And I want to highlight just a couple of these abuses of power now. Number one, committing illegal war and humanitarian crimes. He has usurped Congress's power to declare war in both Iran and in Venezuela. Trump also planned war crimes in Iran and Palestine, threatening to commit genocide of the Iranian people and threatening to unlawfully displace Palestinians from Gaza. This is an impeachable offense. Number two, committing treason and abusing his power by inciting violence, murder, and covering up the execution of civilians by ICE agents. He has weaponized ICE to punish the opposition party, disrupt local communities, instill fear in the civilian population, and quell unlawful political dissent. Federal agents have executed and shot people in the streets. Trump and his administration are encouraging, condoning, and covering up these murders, protecting the murderers, and spreading dangerous information about the crimes and the victims. This is an impeachable offense. Sorry, I almost cussed there for a second. Number three, unconstitutionally and systematically violating the First Amendment. Trump has systematically abused his power to stop people from and punish people for exercising freedom of speech, assembly, and press. These are rights enshrined in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. They are among our most sacred and important rights, necessary for a functional democracy. Our democracy cannot survive if speech is suppressed, and if people are denied access to a robust and independent press, or if people are afraid to take positions counter by those expressed by the ruling party. All of which is currently happening as the intended result of Trump's lawless conduct. This is an impeachable offense. These are just a few of the hundreds of impeachable offenses across 27 grounds that we have identified. And unless action is taken, these offenses will keep mounting at the expense of our democratic institutions and the health and safety of all people who call this country home. Congress has the ability and responsibility to impeach and remove this lawless president. There is something that we can actually do. Our campaign has included working with Congressman Al Green on articles of impeachment, collecting over 1 million petition signatures and counting, and working with local groups to support their organizing to target their member of Congress to support impeachment. I'll let you all know that a number of California members of Congress do not yet support impeachment. That's an organizing opportunity. If you are interested in working on that, we would love to work and support you. And that's not the only fight that we're engaged in. Free Speech for People has a campaign to abolish ICE. This is a democratic issue. ICE is a rogue agency that violates constitutional rights and civil liberties. We have worked with Congresswoman Delia Ramirez on her legislation to hold this agency accountable. Congress has the ability to abolish ICE. And once again, also, unfortunately, a number of California members of Congress do not yet support or co-sponsor this legislation. Another organizing opportunity. We would love to work with you all on that. And we're also working to hold Trump accountable at the state level. Federal agents who have engaged in murders in Minnesota, Texas, Maine, and California have yet to face prosecution for these unlawful killings. California state and local prosecutors actually do have the ability to investigate and criminally charge those responsible for those deaths, but they have not done so. So if you want to organize to hold Trump and ICE accountable in the state of California, we'd love to work with you all and support you. And then last, we have a campaign to address this corrupt and destructive Supreme Court. We are in deep need of accountability and major structural reform when it comes to the court. So if you're interested in working on that, let me know. So I want to conclude just by saying that during this time of darkness and rising tyranny, the fight for justice and democracy is all the more urgent. And Free Speech for People is proud to be in this fight with you all. And I want to also add that for me, it's really personally means something for me to be here with you all at this time. My life was completely changed when I entered into student organizing spaces and when I was in rooms just like this. And that's really how I found my purpose, and it's completely shaped my life. And so I hope that you know, all of you here, how much that myself and so many others are here to support you in your leadership. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. These are exactly the people that you're supposed to be with. And if you don't feel like you're ready for this moment, or it's not supposed to be you, let me tell you, that's how every single one of us has ever felt. And there is an incredible opportunity for you to lead and be courageous right now. And we're so excited to help you do that, to be the most powerful versions of yourselves. I want to share a quote that really encapsulates this for me. It goes like this: I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. When I was in the student movement, I had a moment to hold the torch. Now it is your turn to hold the torch. Don't just keep it lit, but let it burn brightly while you all have it. And we'll be here to support you as you lead the way. Thank you so much. So there's time for Q&A. So if there's any questions that you all have, be it about lessons from student organizing, or about any of the things I talked about in terms of democracy or civil resistance, I'd be happy to answer any for you.
So I was wondering, you mentioned in your lessons, the first one was do not give.
No, I was just looking where you were at. I see. Hi.
Do not give power in advance of to the
comply in advance. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What did that? I was a little bit confused on what that meant, and what are some examples of people giving power in advance, and then what are some examples of resisting that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've seen that with a lot of universities, actually. There have been demands from the Trump administration to university administrations across the country telling them to strip DEI from research, from academic departments and programs. There are examples of universities who said yes. That some universities who were actually never demanded by the Trump administration to do so, but proactively did it out of fear that they might one day be given this demand. I think that's a perfect embodiment of this idea of anticipatory obedience. But we've also seen many universities who said absolutely not. Right now, Harvard is in a major power struggle. They have pending lawsuits against the Trump administration to defend their freedom and the freedom of speech and academic freedom at the university. And so I think that they're one of the great examples of folks who are ready to go down with the fight, and that's been inspiring for other universities to follow suit. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Samantha. Thank you so much for speaking with such conviction and tactic. I think that's really helpful for everyone in this room, whether they're new or experienced. I am so impressed about all the civic engagement things you have done through your work. It is insane. You got so many registered voters. As someone who's trying to do a lot of civic engagement on my campus, it is not easy to get people to be registered to vote or understand the importance of voting. Could you share one of the most impactful tactics your team used to get students registered or anybody registered to vote, and then also get to the polls, because students will register and then forget? How did you keep that engagement? Because that is so impressive. I cannot stress that enough. It is so hard to get people registered to vote. I dressed in a taco costume so people would get to register to vote. It's serious. So please let us know your knowledge, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I've worn some pretty embarrassing costumes and outfits trying to get people to vote. So right there with you. I would say that first and foremost for designing a vote program, it starts with the organizer math. So, okay, let's say you have a goal of registering 5,000 students on your campus. What are the tactics that you're going to be doing? Let's say you're going to be doing clipboarding. Okay, in a given volunteer hour, a clipboarder may on average get 5 voter registrations an hour. Okay, 1 hour. How many hours then of clipboarding do we need in order to get to our goal at the end? and just doing the math, and then you have the equation, you then will know exactly how many hours, how many volunteers that you need, and then it's about finding folks who will then organize with you and just filling people in. I'd say that the two tactics that I think are the most impactful are clipboarding, and that means not tabling. I mean, tabling is great, but it's very passive. You know, it means people coming to you, you're sitting behind a table, but instead, you know, being out there with a clipboard, talking to students, just trying to make it as easy as possible for them to register to vote. Like literally walk with them as they're going to class, walk them all the way to the front door of the classroom. Just how can you make it as easy as possible? The second major tactic, and I think this can vary a bit on campus to campus, but we called it class wraps. I think that term, maybe it's, so okay, some people do still use it, okay, great. But essentially, you know, going to a class before, you know, class is gonna start, ask the professor, can I have 2 minutes at the top of class? Have your voter registration cards ready, pass one out, do all of like the best organizing practices. Put one in the hand of every single student in the class. Make sure every single student has one in their hand. Walk them through how to fill it out right then and there. Tell them, fill it out right then and there. Do not take it home because they're not gonna fill it out and turn it on their own. They're gonna say they're going to, but they're not going to. So have them do it right there with you. And you know, when you have the big lecture halls, it could be a couple hundred students in that classroom. You could get 50, 75 voter registrations in that one 5-minute window. So I think class wraps are very, very impactful. And then as far as turnout, I mean, I think that you all are living in an exciting time. You know, we had social media when I was a student, but it wasn't like what it is right now. And so I do think that you have the ability to educate students so much more about what's on the ballot, who is on the ballot, and then be able to get to them over and over again, reminders and information about when election day is. And I think there's just a ton of digital organizing opportunities, especially when it comes to getting people to actually turn out and vote. Thank you for the great question.
Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you. I'm Francisco. I just had a quick question. What is like one lesson that you learned as an organizer that you wish you told yourself when you first were starting out as organizing?
I think probably the number one lesson I wish that I would have told myself is like, choose less things to take on and do the things that you do well. I mean, it's so easy to get pulled in like a million different directions, and then I mean, there was like times where I was like, oh yeah, like I can like be involved with all these different efforts on campus, statewide, nationally, and I would take on too much and then at times like not do any of it well. And so I think, you know, being really intentional about like, what are the couple things that I can take on, and then just give your all and do the best version of organizing that you can do for those things. And I would say, you know, also like choose the things that matter the most. It's also easy, I think, to get caught up in like, and I'll just speak for myself, like there was, you know, often things happening with the administration or just certain fights that like in hindsight, like, you know, I'm not as proud, like I can't say look back at those and be like, oh, I'm so proud of like what we did to fight over like getting copies of like the minutes from that meeting that they had that we weren't in. But I am really, really proud of you know, helping win in-state tuition for undocumented students. And I'm proud of the work that I did around, you know, defending federal financial aid for college students. Like those are the things that I look back of, and if anything, I just wish I could have given more of myself to those and been more intentional about how I was spending my time. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking to us today. You're really inspiring. I really appreciate that. So my question was, how do you get people to like care? I know that sounds kind of blunt, but like these are topics that are kind of like heavy, and I know that some people nowadays would rather like not engage with it, obviously. And so how do you get people to care as much as you do, and in like masses, like the way that you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that is, I think it's a great question. It's always something that we face, you know, often people talk in terms of like apathy, of like people are so apathetic, they don't care. I think that apathy is a little bit of an illusion, that there's usually something more going on there. I think people are often like intimidated and feel like they don't know where to start. And so I think the job of an organizer and student leaders is to make it very easy for people to take their first action. There are the people who are gonna like sit in the room or sit on the Zoom calls and think about like, what's the strategy? What's the tactics? When are we doing it on what timeline? And then there are the people who, at this moment, just need to receive like the marching orders. They can't be the ones who are gonna help drive the strategy. And so, there's this thing called like the art of the ask. Like, what's the ask that you can give people? Is it, an easy first one of like, just sign the petition. We have a petition, all you gotta do is sign it. Okay, they did that. Let's move them up the ladder of engagement. Like, can you share that, text that to like 3 of your friends right now and ask them to sign it? Okay, great. Can you call your legislator? Can you show up in person for this meeting and slowly build people up and find the folks who are ready to take action? But I do think that as organizers, it's our job to make things as easy as possible. And I would say that there's a fine line between like education as a mean, a political education as a means to support organizing and awareness campaigns. I'm not a fan of awareness campaigns, and the reason for that is because often there is no ask for people. It's just like, here's a bunch of sad, depressing stuff. Figure out a way you can do something about it, rather than educating people and then saying, here's the first thing that you can do right now, and inviting them into more and more action, and then eventually into more and more leadership. So I think the first step is just trying to make it as easy as possible for others to take action.
Thank you.
And I think we might have time for one more question.
Hello, my name is William. Firstly, wow, what an amazing presentation. I truly am inspired. My question is, you touched on corporate-enabled fascism, and that's a term I find very relevant today more than ever. I looked at your work, and you work a lot on challenging corruption within the government and within the corporations that enable it. My question is, what's the most impactful way you've been able to fight corruption on both sides, and what's the way you would recommend to us to be able to fight corruption and fight back, whether it's corporate or governmental?
Yeah, I thank you. I would go back to that point before about the different forms of power, like building and wielding certain forms of power like apply in different situations. So when it comes to corporations, that's the consumer power. And again, at the end of the day though, it all comes back to numbers. Like, we are only as powerful as many people that we have. So I think that there's some really inspiring examples as of recent when it comes to folks organizing against certain corporations. There's been a lot that's happened like in the media, as folks might be familiar with, and like when it came to like Jimmy Kimmel or some of the stuff with like Disney and stuff, like people started canceling their accounts, their memberships, and like people did so en masse. Also, those things didn't like just happen organically. There were people who were like organizers, some of which I know, and they were like, who are very brilliant, and they're like, okay, I see the opportunity here. I see like a clear way of how we can collectively influence our power. And they started putting out calls to action, strategically trying to reach people on social media through digital organizing, getting op-eds or letters to the editor placed in order to reach people. And then the demand resonated and people started canceling their Disney Plus accounts and things like that. And we've already seen very concrete ways in which then corporations back down or have distanced themselves with the Trump administration. From my work, I work with a lot of lawyers, so there's also another form of power, which is regulatory or legal power. We try and use that and have been able to do that in a few different arenas, but really using the courts and the law on our side. That being said, there are limitations with that in this moment in the United States, because a lot of our courts, we can't rely on certain justices. So there really is a need for court reform in the US. But again, when it comes to challenging corruption, I think that one of the things I would really highlight overall in terms of corruption in government is that you are gonna hear from those who are elected leaders over and over again about how they don't have the power to do something. I can't tell you how many meetings, I'm sure you all have heard this too, of oh, I totally agree with you on this issue, but ultimately it's up to the governor, or ultimately that's up to Congress, or ultimately that's up to the Republican Party. That's not true. Like, there are very few elected officials, in my opinion, in this country who are taking every tool at their disposal to confront this administration and to protect American democracy. Very few of them are actually using every weapon at their disposal within their power. And if they're not willing to, if they're not brave enough and they're afraid of standing up in this moment, that's fine. They should step down and make way for someone else who's going to be willing to stand up. And so I think that there's a lot more like, feistiness that needs to happen from elected officials, but ultimately at the end of the day, like, we know they're not going to do that unless we are forcing them to do that. And so when they say, I don't have the power to do X, Y, and Z, go talk to that person, we need to call them on and say, like, that's BS, yes you do, and we expect you to take action now, and put the spotlight on them, put the fire, put the pressure, and I know that's what UCSA is also very good at, so yeah. I think that's all the time we have. Thank you all so much. I'm going to be hanging around for a while, so please come find me. Would love to connect with you all further, and if you're interested in collaborating, please let me know. I'd love to work with you, but thank you again.